Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Sansone. I'm a psychotherapist opposed to psychopathic authoritarianism. This is Mind Matters and Everything Else. My website is josephsansone.com. Today I have with us Dr. Rima Laibow. She pronounces it Laibow. I heard it both ways. Eminent psychiatrist. We got this whole transference, countertransference thing going on here. Dr. Rima, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's been a long time since we spoke.
Yes.
I first I want to get your websites out there. It's Dr. Rima Truth Reports Substack.com.
No,
And no,
no,
what is it?
no. We've abandoned that one
Oh, you have a new Substack?
because yeah, the Substack. Oh, I'm sorry. Could we start again? I thought you were talking about my website. My
No, we're just keeping
website
this. This is
was called
gold. This is gold. We're keeping it. So we got Dr. Rima Truth Reports.substack.com. That is
Substack.
good. Okay, what are your websites? Do we still have
Okay.
PreventGenocide2030.org?
PreventGenocide2030.org. And that's so important that I no longer am dealing with the websites, the other websites, because PreventGenocide2030.org is about literally saving humanity. That's kind of significant.
Well, that's good. We'd like to save humanity. Do you have a new website?
No,
Oh, you didn't. So you're sticking with, okay, so that's it. PreventGenocide2030.org and Dr. Rima Truth Reports.substack.com. Okay.
thank you.
Okay. We got that out of the way. All right. So we'll link to that below. So, Dr. Rima, I wrote I want to start off talking about the Hantavirus and then we'll go over where you want to go from there. But yeah, I actually wrote an article about it, how I thought it was an indirect hypnotic suggestion like I within, and since you're one of the few psychiatrists I know that actually has clinical experience with hypnosis, when I looked at this coming out, I don't think they're going to try to make this like COVID, but I see it as an indirect hypnotic reinforcer or convincer for the contact tracing, the whole thing, the whole ball of wax, the idea that your government is actually trying to protect you and so on. What is your take on the Hantavirus? Is this going to be another pandemic, or like I think it's setting us up for the next one because it's reinforcing all the things that went along with COVID.
Let's
And
start.
because if they save us because of their contact tracing, they prevented the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So, what are your thoughts on this
Let's
crazy?
start with the fact that modern societies, like the one that we have, with moderately adequate nutrition and pretty good sanitation and hygiene and moderately good health care, do not have pandemics. They have occasional outbreaks of this or that, but pandemics occur where you don't have modern healthcare, modern sanitation, filtered water, uh, effluent and human waste that's drawn away from the water supply. So there are no modern pandemics. Let's start with that.
So
And if you look at
a place like the Congo where they're having the Ebola outbreak right now, that's they don't have all the modern amenities that we're talking about, correct?
First of all, are they actually having an Ebola outbreak, or are we hearing that they're having an Ebola
The
outbreak?
claim is that they're having like 58
Yes,
people
the
dying or
claim
something. Yeah,
is.
right.
When Ebola was supposedly rampaging through Sierra Leone, Liberia,
Mhm.
Burkina Faso in 2014, it turns out that the particular strain that was allegedly released from Kenema Hospital, first of all, uh, let's talk about Kenema Hospital. Kenema Hospital in Sierra Leone was a hospital with a level 3 biosecurity lab that had no running water. The
Right.
facility itself had dirt floors and no glass in the windows. So, Norway, the United Nations, the United States, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded and built a level 3 biosecurity laboratory in a facility without running water. Say what? And the other thing that they did in that facility was allegedly play with Ebola virus. Now, that's rather interesting because by international agreement, law, and treaty, level 4 biosecurity containment laboratories are the only laboratories that can work with hemorrhagic viruses like Marburg and Takarib and
Mhm.
Ebola. And so, what were they doing? Playing around with level 3, the biosecurity with the Ebola virus. And oh, by the way, what Ebola virus strain broke loose and supposedly killed all these people? That's very interesting. It's one that, as I published at the time, had 117 US government patents weaponizing that particular strain. And so it was
That's interesting.
released by Doctors Without Borders, an astroturf organization that used to be full of decent people and has morphed, the CIA, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Norway, WHO, and the United States. And they colluded, and we have documentation, they colluded to make sure that there was a disease, a hemorrhagic virus that was killing people in Burkina Faso, in Sierra Leone, and in Liberia. Let me tell you a little footnote history, if I may.
Okay.
You remember COVID? I think you've heard of COVID,
Vaguely,
right?
vaguely.
COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
Okay. COVID-19 suddenly burst upon the scene. 85 countries simultaneously had COVID cases in 3 days, which is not how diseases spread, by the way. And there
I
was,
disagree. I've seen it in movies a lot of times.
there
It
you
spreads
go.
it, and then the people become zombies. I've seen this before.
Well, other than in truth newsreels like
Yeah.
that, it's usually not how it happens. So, oh, and by the way, the PCR kits were sold by the hundreds of millions for COVID-19 detection. COVID-19 apparently burst on the scene de novo in late 2019, November 2019,
Mhm.
except for the fact that those kits were sold, and we've published the bills of lading and the sales receipts and so on by the hundreds of millions starting in 2017. So maybe there's a little temporal distortion here. Some time traveler cooked it
Yeah.
up and sold it in the past that was really the future. In other words, the whole thing is nonsense. But to go back to Ebola. So you remember that there were two, well, actually there were
Three.
four, quote, well, there was AstraZeneca, Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna all
Right.
had quote vaccines that were approved. And how were they approved? They were approved through emergency use authorization, EUA. Now, emergency use authorization cannot be issued if there's any other possible way of treating the disease, in this case, COVID-19, in this case, a supposedly novel virus, the first patents of which, as you know, go back to 2011. So I don't know what novel means here, but never mind. Anyway, the EUAs were issued because there was no other way of treating these disorders. Well, let's go back to 2009. In 2009, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, of the DARPA agency of the United States Department of Defense declassified a study in which they showed that if you put a hemorrhagic virus, whether it's Takarib or Marburg or Ebola, in the presence of cells, normal human cells, what the virus does, and they have electron microscope photographs of this happening, what the virus does is attach to the cell, penetrate the cell, and then move inside the cell and replicate wildly. And then the cell bursts and the process is repeated. And by the way, for those people who say viruses don't exist, they have micrographs of something doing that. You know, maybe it's your Aunt Matilda's galoshes. I don't know, but it's something small doing that. And then
Yeah.
they said, I'm sorry,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's somewhat of a semantic argument at times anyway.
it's
It
irrelevant.
is, we may not know everything about it, but there's something there. But
Something is doing that. Call it anything you want. I don't care what you call it. But to go back to the story, they said, wonder what silver does, nano silver does in this environment. So they took various concentrations of nano silver, very finely divided silver, and they discovered that the lowest concentration that they tested, 10 parts per million, not 25, not 50, not 2,000, not 10,000, 10 parts per million, was the most effective at making it so that the virus, the particle, call it what you want, could not attach to the cell, could not penetrate the cell, and could not replicate within the cell. So, in the presence of the 10 parts per million nano silver particles of one particular brand, there was no disease. There were cells and there were these viral particles, but there was no disease. Okay. Now, when the 2014 Ebola event occurred in Africa, I made available to the government of Sierra Leone that very nano silver that actually had my name on it. I did not know these tests had been conducted, by the way, and they were declassified in 2009, and I found out about them in 2014. So I made available to the government of Sierra Leone several hundred bottles of the 10 parts per million nano silver based on the research that the US government had done. That I also made available to the government of Liberia, nano silver, and we set up a clinical trial with the Minister of Health. What happened was that the World Health Organization, which better should be called the World Holocaust Organization, headed by a known and documented genocidalist, by the way, Tedros Ghebreyesus, the World Health Organization interdicted those shipments, those clinical trials, and that process. And in the case of the 200 bottles of nano silver, they actually stole the nano silver. We got it back. We got it to the government of Sierra Leone. And they were able to literally cure the people in the Ebola treatment centers in Liberia. The trial was interdicted when the president of Sierra Leone, Roberta Sirleaf, called the treatment center just as the doctor was unscrewing the first bottle. He's in his moon suit. He's unscrewing the first bottle to give the first dose to the first patient. She says, "This is President Roberta Sirleaf. I am here with head of station of WHO. There will be no clinical trial. If there's any clinical trial using nano silver, all aid to Liberia from all sources will be cut off."
Wow.
Meanwhile, back to Sierra Leone. I have a video of the Minister of Information, the Honorable Alfred Kanu, standing in front of an empty Ebola treatment center, holding a bottle of silver and saying, "This cured 500 people with Ebola. Every single one of them was cured with the administration of this nano silver." So I reached out to Honorable Alpha Kanu and I said, "How do we get you more silver? I cannot supply a country's worth of silver." This was just an experimental
Mhm.
um, uh, trial. "How do we get you more silver?" And Honorable Alfred Kanu said, "We don't." I said, "Why not? You've still got yours, you've still got river blindness, you've still got tuberculosis, you've still got malaria. Why not?" He said, "President Joseph Karoma of Sierra Leone was told directly by head of station of WHO that if we acquire any silver for any purpose, any nano silver, for any purpose, all aid to Sierra Leone from all sources will be cut." So we have Liberia, President Sirleaf. We have Sierra Leone, President Karoma, saying WHO head of station just told me we get no more money if we use nanosilver. That was
Was there any
2014.
plausible explanation for why?
Uh-huh. And it came about in 2019.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the FDA, that's the Fraud and Death Administration, hauls me and my co-trustee of the Natural Solutions Foundation into federal court, Third Circuit, New Jersey, accusing us of all kinds of horrible crimes, claiming to cure COVID-19 and so on. And that didn't happen. We never did that. But
Mhm.
the point is, they had to vilify Nano Silver and me and the Natural Solutions Foundation because, haha, here's where the interesting part is. In order to issue an emergency use authorization to Pfizer, to Johnson and Johnson, to AstraZeneca, and to Moderna for their bioweapons, untested,
Mhm.
incredibly dangerous bioweapons, there has to be no other plausible treatment
Right.
available. So they had to demonize a plausible treatment for a serious viral disease. And they had to do that so that they could disseminate and deploy their bioweapon.
And
Now,
just so people
that's
know, you are one of the experts that gave me an affidavit for my ongoing case here in Florida. So, all right. So, very
so
quickly,
now
and
we
then
get to
I'll get you
hantavirus
right back on
is the
track. I just
same
want,
thing.
okay, very quickly though. Are you saying that the quote unquote Ebola outbreaks and stuff were in fact like testing a weapon in those instances, in your opinion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There,
Okay. Now,
it's not just in my opinion. The fact is that the Ebola strain had been weaponized through
yep. Okay.
117 patents.
Flash forward it to what's going on now in the Congo, which is, I guess, in the middle of a little bit of a civil war or something. So what's going on there? Do you know about that situation?
What I know, first of all, is I don't trust anything that comes out of any
Mhm.
news source that is bringing us information from, first of all, that part of the world, and second of all, anything that the World Health Organization, the World Holocaust Organization begins to want us to believe. So my skepticism is at a level of 200 on a scale of 1 to
Yeah,
10.
I'm waiting
That's
for them. I'm waiting for them to claim that it mutated and went airborne, and then as they're hitting us with the frequency and we're like bleeding out of our orifices, everybody
eh,
believes it's, I mean, that's how crazy. And I don't write that off, as a possibility because they're that crazy.
not only are they that crazy, the technology to do exactly that exists.
Right.
For the people who have been inoculated with a bioweapon, either directly through a jab or indirectly through shedding, or God knows what's coming down on food through
Yeah.
geoengineering and craziness, um, the receptors for frequency direction, frequency transmission are very, very, very important biologically and biochemically. And so you can hit them with a frequency, and they have biological effects that they're programmed to have that could be suddenly we have an eruption of Marburg. Remember, a year and a half ago, it was Marburg virus, it wasn't hantavirus.
Mhm.
Um, I know that we are being exposed to programming to get us to be vulnerable to the lie that we are subject to various kinds of pandemics. As I said at the very beginning today, we don't have pandemics. We have propagandemics, and we have case demics, and we have bioweapondemics. But those are not true health emergencies. They are depopulation strategies.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair assessment. What's your cycling back to what I originally mentioned? What's your take on the hantavirus? Is that going to be the next COVID, or
If
what
they
or is
can
that?
get away with it, if they can get away
Yeah.
with it. They tried, if you remember a little while back, it was this terrible flu that we were going to see this year. It was a really awful flu in 2025. It was going to take out vast parts of the
Yeah.
population. Oops. People said, oh, well, yeah, ho hum. Look, I got to go get my shoelaces pressed. Forget it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I think
they,
that's part of it. You have enough of the population that will not comply. I mean, you got a certain segment of the population is like, oh wow, am I going to get paid to watch Netflix for a year again? You know, and that kind of thing.
yes,
And then you've got so I think there's people who are still brainwashed that are really afraid and they'll put the mask on and all that. You see that once in a while when the news is hyping stuff up. You'll see people doing that more. So does it I mean, what is your take on the well, first of all, the hantavirus itself, what do you know about that? You want to explain that briefly to us? And then I want to ask you something else.
hantavirus is an endemic pathogenic condition that travels around in mice, not
Hmm.
rats, not hamsters, not gerbils, mice.
Mice. Okay.
And as far as I'm aware, and somebody may correct me on this, but as far as I understand, it does not do damage to the mouse. So the mouse is a reservoir for the
Hmm.
hantavirus. If you handle a mouse directly or if you come in contact with contaminated mouse droppings, then you are at risk for developing a viral disease
So if you
called
don't play with,
hantavirus.
if you don't, interact with mouse, would it be meese? If you don't interact with meese saliva or droppings, feces, then you really wouldn't have to worry about the
Dr.
hantavirus.
Sansone, let me caution you. Do not have sex with a mouse.
I don't think it's possible.
You never know. But anyway,
Okay.
they might run out of children in the halls of
Okay.
politics. Who knows?
Okay.
Anyhow, the point is that it's a very low risk. Bubonic plague is endemic in the southwest of the United States. Maybe there's one case a year of bubonic plague.
Right, because like you
Maybe.
said, we have sanitation and things like that. It's not even on the radar screen. So, but this Andy
And we,
strain of the
we I
hantavirus,
want to add one other thing. We
yeah,
have this thing called an immune system. We have this thing called natural immunity.
I've
We
heard of
meet
that.
diseases all the time, and
Right.
we prevent ourselves from either getting sick from them or
Mhm.
dying from them pretty regularly. Now, hantavirus, when it is established in a human being, can, especially if the human being does not have a robust immune system, be fatal between 30 and 40% of the time.
And
So it
this, I was just going to say, but the thing is, what I think what the hantavirus is supposedly is that it's transmissible when people are symptomatic. Okay, and it's not airborne. It's not like when they're asymptomatic. I think they're mostly symptomatic when it's transmissible, but also it's you correct me if I'm wrong, but also it's transmitted through like saliva and direct contact. It's not like an airborne thing like the flu or something like that. Correct?
correct,
And that's
correct.
assuming this whole thing isn't fake, because how do you get some bird watchers taking like pictures of birds in some dump or something like that? What are they doing? Playing with the mouse feces? I just don't get how they picked it up. It's not, they didn't even give us a story like they were in a cave or something. You know?
Not only that, how do they know it's hantavirus? It's kind of a non-specific respiratory and inflammatory
Right.
response. Looks like pretty much everything else. The only way they could tell us it's hantavirus is fasten your seatbelt and put on your crash helmet, a PCR test. Well, we know that the PCR tests are so accurate and never give us false positives. We know that. We also
And
know
we
that the
also
PC,
know,
wait,
hold on.
I need to add one other thing, if I may.
Go
We
ahead.
also know that the PCR test that they are using to quote diagnose, and we know PCR should never be used to diagnose anything. The PCR test that they're using to diagnose hantavirus matches the human genome. That's how they
That's
get a
interesting.
positive.
That's interesting. So, one other thing though is we do know that the PCR test they won't get your DNA. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm wrong on that because back in February when Macron was going to go visit to see Putin or whatever, they declined to do the PCR test in Russia because it would be a national security threat for them to get his DNA. So they did it before he went. So it's like all that time they were telling us they can't get your DNA from it and stuff, yet a world leader won't get it done because they can get his DNA and it's a national security threat. So I'm just that's a little odd, you know. So all right, so um what about I guess since we're talking about ways you want to kill us here, what about the one thing is and I remember the guy speaking at the World Economic Forum within the last year, the video surfaced within the last year. He might have spoke earlier, but he was talking about a tick that creates like a natural allergy to beef. And then he was talking about basically talking about this would be a great idea to use that so people become allergic to beef. And now all of a sudden we got a little situation with ticks here going on.
Mhm.
What's the deal
Uh,
with it?
the deal now, I'm going to name someone of whom you've probably never heard. He's been working so quietly in the background in many of these areas. His name is Bill Gates.
Okay.
Bill Gates, yeah. Maybe you've heard of Bill Gates. Bill Gates
Yeah, I think
has
sort of them.
used some of his extraordinary fortune to pay for engineering ticks to transmit a new disease that has never, ever existed in human beings before, ever. It's called alpha gal. It means that people who get bitten by this tick develop a quote allergy to red meat. They can't eat beef, they can't eat lamb, they can't eat pork, they can't eat bacon, they can't eat anything that comes from a mammal. Um, Now, if you happen to be in the business of creating sludge fake food to give to people who live in your 15-minute cities, and when you decide what they eat and whether they eat, and you don't want them to have animal food, animal derived food, because you have decided that you're going to destroy animal husbandry and plant agriculture, and there will be no agricultural production on the entire planet. It's really helpful to have everybody not able to eat meat. You don't have a black market in meat. You don't have people protesting because if they eat red meat, they're going to die. So they say, okay, I won't eat red meat. I'll eat make believe fake red meat. I
I mean,
wonder how that happened.
I suppose you could also make money on some type of blood test or something that would tell you whether you're allergic to it or not too, because
Of
like
course.
I mean, I would do that because I wouldn't want to you know, if you're going to die from eating red meat. So first of all, they're going to destroy the agriculture, you know, producing the red meat because you're going to destroy the market for it if they get away with this. And so and for people that aren't too familiar with us or what we talk about, like so I remember when I went back to school and I was sitting through these classes at in my undergraduate, because I went back to school. I didn't go as I'm sitting through it in my undergraduate classes at FGCU, and I'm sitting there listening to them talk about how agriculture is unsustainable. And and I looked at them and I looked at the professor. I'm like, do you realize that if the billionaires that run the world believe that, they're going to kill everybody? And like, so there's really like there are people that believe this type of crazy thinking that agriculture is not sustainable. We're,
Those people
we're
work for
sustainable because of our agriculture. It's not that agriculture is not sustainable.
precisely.
So it's like, but and so there really are there real. And I'm not saying that the people that are engineering these thought viruses really believe this stuff, but they get enough people to go along with it that they can implement what they want. And after a while, they're not going to need us useless food eaters anyway, because they'll just have AI and robotics, I guess.
They've
But
already they've already made that clear.
yeah,
They who are batshit crazy. Let's be clear about this. They're rich and they have somebody to press their clothes and shine their shoes and fly their jet planes. That doesn't guarantee any level of mental health. These people are crazy. They are psychopaths. They are psychopathic authoritarians,
yes,
which
we
is a
agree.
phrase that you have developed beautifully. And I suggest everybody pre order Dr. Sansone's book because it's a very, very important book
We got to wait till
on
it's
psych.
available, but we got to wait till it's available. Dr. Rima is saying that because she just reviewed the manuscript. So
I
yeah, so
did,
but
and it's brilliant. These people have decided that they have the right to decide literally who lives and who dies, who serves them and who does not. And no one who serves them and serves their purposes as they understand them at the moment
mhm,
has the right to live. And those few people who are given the right to live by these lunatics, these well heeled lunatics, will be compressed into 1% of the world's landmass on what are now being called 15-minute cities, and their
mhm.
food will be given to them if they get their food, and they will, as the um, despicable and redoubtable Klaus Schwab said, eat the bugs. But we have to remember that that same despicable and redoubtable Klaus Schwab also said, by the year 2030, all human reproduction will take place outside the human body. And given the collapse of human reproductive capacity, that kind of makes sense.
You do a good imitation. Actually, I think Lisa Marone in her book World on Mute actually talks a little bit about that. She's kind of got a theory that eventually they'll get rid of women because if they can develop an external womb, they're so crazy, who knows? So I don't know. It's
It's really important to emphasize how crazy they are. Uh, the fact that they want to do these things, the fact that they can think that it makes sense to do these things is a diagnostic. The fact that they're wealthy and powerful doesn't make them sane. They are murderously mad.
Yeah, we call it PAD, psychopathic authoritarian disorder. But Dr. Riemann just says they're batshit crazy. It's the same thing. But it's and it's really that's an interesting concept though. So let's get a little psychological here because it is we're talking about like, stuff that is really sick and twisted. And it's hard, I think, for someone within a normal degree of sanity. Let's say there's a pendulum and we're all somewhere here, and but for someone who's in within, not in a totally insane category, um, it's hard to envision people being this evil, this twisted, this sadistic. And I think it's important though for people to realize that it's like you kind of have to know who you're dealing with. Like I might know if I'm dealing with someone, there's certain things I can take for granted. And then, but if I know if I'm talking with someone else, I need to, maybe hang on to my wallet, be prepared to defend myself. Like, so you need to know who we're dealing with. And we're dealing with people that believe that you don't even have a right to breathe, let alone eat.
I think it's really important to understand that people who are this crazy are invisible to normal people. Any but where one on this wide part of the spectrum, the swing range of the pendulum. Anybody who's not out here or out here, we'll
Mhm.
call normal for now. Most people cannot even wrap their minds around what it is like to be one of these people, so they don't see them psychologically. These people are extremely good at putting up a mask. You never see who they are. You see the mask that they present you. And the better they are at this, the better they are at giving you what you want. That mask is a construct based in your expectations, your needs, and your vulnerabilities. And it has nothing to do with who they are, what they want, and what they will do because they have no morality or value system other than what serves my perceived interest. I'm the only one that has any rights to anything.
And it might be hard for people to recognize that too, because generally that's a positive quality. If you're a social human being, you connect with people, you build rapport with them, you kind of meet them at their level, you kind of, and there's an interaction. But what we're talking about, people who are faking it, doing that to each context or environment that they're in, and they're so good at faking it that you don't realize it's insincere. They're not that, and now granted, what we're seeing publicly, I think it's like they're all coming out of the closet. It's like now I think they're just rubbing our noses in it. But I think it metaphorically though, I think you're right too, because the people orchestrating everything that's going on, we probably don't even know their names.
For sure. But let me talk about how difficult it is for ordinary people to even perceive the possibility that there's somebody living this masked life.
Yeah, let's do
I'm
that. That's it.
brighter than the average bear. I'm psychologically minded. I'm pretty intuitive. My first husband had an IQ of 180. He was a really bright dude. He was a biochemist, really bright. Everybody loved him. He was a college professor. He was beloved by his students, by the faculty, by everybody who ever met him. He was funny, he was kind, he was supportive, blah, 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 blah. I loved him too, until I began to determine that something was amiss and I didn't know what. And I'm pretty analytic. Well, it turned out and I was with him for a very long time. It turned out he was a perfect psychopath. He had a whole separate life. He was doing utterly despicable things that I never got any wind of. As soon as I figured out what was going on, I was gone. But the point is, that was many years, decades. And that happens because these people are invisible to us. The better they are at masking, the more invisible they are. Now, suppose somebody like this decides to be a head of state or a head of a major corporation or Bill Gates or any one of the many, many, many psychopaths who have decided that they have the right to determine who lives and who dies. Then we have what we have now. It's called globalism.
And I think that if we did not have the experience of COVID tyranny, that whole era, and I don't think they were able to play that as far as they wanted to, but I think that if that didn't occur, a lot of these people would still look innocent in many people's mind. Like now, I think a lot of people are awake to it, and they are questioning, a lot of these people. I mean, beyond just Bill Gates and Trump and Gavin Newsom, people like that. I mean, they just see somebody instead of just taking them for their word. I think they're skeptical, and I think they should be. Um,
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
yeah, because it's still, I think it's hard for people to just fathom that there's people that are this evil and this malicious. They clearly get off on it. But we have this 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence coming up, and I was thinking of doing something on that. Like, maybe we should focus on was it paragraph 2, where it talks about abolishing the government? Is that the paragraph where it talks about that? I think that's really where the emphasis. That's really where activists, I think, should put the emphasis on publicly, because I think that if your government doesn't fear you, your government's a tyranny. Like your government needs to behave like the battered child, not you. The government needs to be walking on eggshells, not us. And right now, it's been totally flipped.
It's very interesting. In 1952, by the way,
Because
uh,
Dr. Rima, the government is a psychopath. It is a charismatic, lying, manipulative, it does everything you described.
right. And it masks itself in
Yes.
benevolence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm the government. I'm here to help you, right?
Right. Right.
The let's talk about the United Nations for a moment. We have been brought up, all of us, to believe that the United Nations is the high point of human peace, love, generosity, benevolence, kindness, and deep caring. And it's no such thing. Remember, psychopaths lie, and the United Nations was designed to become the one world government in
Right.
which you have neither rights nor probably statistically existence, because their plan is to kill at least 90% of the current world's population, at least, possibly more. Well, this organization has a charter. That charter is its constitution. And by the way, if you go to preventgenocide2030.org, on the home page, you will see a legal memo, which lays out in very convincing terms the fact that the United States has never actually become a member of the United Nations. We're not a member of it. And even if we were, there's no such thing as a United Nations treaty, because treaties can only exist between sovereign nations. But that's another point. Anyway, the point is that the charter, the universal, I'm sorry, not the charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations, which was adopted by the United States in 1952. Why? We already had a constitution. Why do we need a universal declaration of nothing? Anyway, Article 29, Section 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations says the diametrically opposite principle of the United States Constitution. Under the United States Constitution, it serves us, and it damn well better be afraid of us. We have rights, inalienable rights that cannot be separated from us. Under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says, Article 29, section point 3, check it for yourself, that anything anybody does ever has to be in harmony with the purposes and principles of the United Nations. You either serve them or you are guilty of wrongthink, and they
So
can do anything they want.
you talk about like Orwellian. Excuse me, sorry. You talk about Orwellian like word usage. You take a word like harmony and use that to promote your psychopathic authoritarianism.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
that is so twisted.
Yep. And most people think, well, that's cool. We can be part of the United Nations and we can have a US Constitution. No, we can't. You get one or the other because
Right.
they are diametrically opposed to one another. I know which one I vote for.
Right. I go with the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights. So part of what the World Economic Forum was promoting in the last few years, some of those videos they put out, one of them was to create a multipolar world. They didn't want a unipolar world with the United States as like the sole superpower. Now they do all this stuff in the form of predictions, but at the same time, I think they're trying to carry out these predictions. And I think when the Ukraine war started, I felt that that hurt the United States by and Europe actually by diving into that the way they did, because it was pushing things toward BRICS and everything. And then in the Iran war, I think has just furthered that a lot more. I think this was devastating for the United States. I think it's going to have, unfortunately, long-term geopolitical fallout. And I think that when we look at that, it's like, so is it easier for a world government if we do have a multipolar world like that? I think there was for a while some people thinking the United States will be able to run it, but I think it seems to me like it's deliberately being done to kind of so there isn't one dominant power. How do you see the whole shift to a multipolar world with the globalism?
Surely everyone listening to this podcast has heard the phrase divide and conquer.
Right.
When you balkanize an area, you get to control everything because you bribe, you bully, and you bludgeon the states, the countries, the units into doing what you want. They
And that's one of the things,
have,
Dr. Rima, that's one of the things arguably behind the push for mass migration all over the places, because it does kind of balkanize different countries and ruin the social cohesion that they might have had prior to that. It creates more chaos, but you're speaking on the macro level
absolutely,
right now. Yeah.
absolutely. It is, in fact, explicitly designed to replace the dominant culture with something else. Um, I don't know about you, but I'd rather not live under Sharia law. I don't know how you feel about that. That's not my favorite. It doesn't really focus on my inalienable, unseparatable, uh, absolute rights. It doesn't give me a whole lot of choices. It would give me fewer choices than you, since I'm a woman. Um, but
Well, I mean, there's positives to everything, Dr. Rima, but let's not focus on that. So, so, all right, all right, let me state it differently. So we're seeing this kind of multipolar world develop. I think that's pretty clear. Uh,
No, I don't agree. We're seeing
okay.
the rhetoric of a multipolar world, which is a unipolar world, and it's the globalist hegemony controlling
Well, that's what I'm
everything.
trying to say. You need to have a multipolar world in order to create a world government. Because if the United States is too powerful, it's not really a world government. You need to have the quote unquote elites from all over. But one of the things that they're doing, I think, is I think like we might be looking at like a and I don't know how bad it'll get because the economies are pretty resilient, but we could be looking at global famine if this
We
continues.
are looking at global famine.
I mean, even here in the West. I mean,
We
like,
are
so,
looking
yeah,
at
right.
global famine
Let's
even
talk
here in
about
the
that
West.
because let's talk about that a little bit within this context and how that even furthers the globalism. Because, I think it's intentional. It's possible people are just stupid. Who knows? But I think it's intent. I think incompetence is a good cover. But so we're going to have the situation with the fertilizers with the Strait of Hormuz, because I didn't realize a lot of these countries produce the fertilizers that come out of there. It's not like it's just
Mhm.
going through there. And so these fertilizers are important. Like a third of the world's fertilizer goes through there, let alone a quarter or more of the world's oil and everything. So you're going to have rising energy costs and food costs. I mean, some of these Asian countries are even having energy lockdowns, like where they're not open certain days and stuff. Um, how bad? Let's start with the famine. How bad do you think that will get? I mean, I think it's going to hit us in January with the food prices for sure. But I mean, how bad is the possibility of severe global famine from especially if this doesn't end shortly?
I think it's guaranteed. It's
Okay.
already been laid out as a certainty. Um, y- Remember that the fertilizer availability was it begun to be, the beginning of the attack was about 3 years ago. Oh, we have to stop making fertilizer. Canada and the United States cut down on the fertilizers that they were permitting to be made. Why? Because we have to destroy agriculture. The World Health Organization and the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization, closed down 3,000 individual, independent, profitable farms in the Netherlands. And if you remember,
Yes.
2 years ago, if
Yeah,
you
that was
remember,
big.
the Netherlands was the single most food productive area on the planet, inch of soil for inch of soil, acre for
It's
acre.
one of the world's most productive bread baskets for that little
Right.
country.
And so it was denuded of its farms. The plan, according to experts who have served as consultants for these monsters, is to have one farm per country. But then again, the plan is also to have one airport per country. Now, in a teeny weeny itsy bitsy country like Vanuatu, maybe they don't have more than one anyway. I don't know. But in the United States, we've got a bunch of airports. But if you're not going anywhere, you don't need any airports, do you?
Well, and that's a good point because the jet fuel costs have gone up so much that how long are these airlines going to be able to survive if this continues?
And
And
do
so
you
that
notice
serves
that
their purpose. Then because only super wealthy people on private jets will be flying.
And do you notice that there's this continuing strain of one airplane hitting another and crashing into the tarmac, and passengers going insane on flights, and attacks happening and so on. And
That we can attribute to the COVID shot.
well, there is that. That's very important. But the fact is that there's a continuing, remember, the news is entirely managed, as you
Yeah.
know. And so there's a continuing drumbeat of how bad it is to travel and how dangerous it is to travel and how airplanes are catching fire and airplanes are flipping over on the tarmac when they try to land and so on and so on. This is all part, in my view, this is all part of the propaganda to get us to the C40 city where there
Hmm.
is no
No
dairy,
cars.
there is no meat, there are no cigarettes, there are no cars. You get, if they decide to give you 3 garments a year, you are under total surveillance. You eat the bugs. You do not reproduce. And Yuval Harari, who is
I'm guessing those 3 garments are like orange jumpsuits.
no doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt. Um, our Yuval Harari says, when asked, what will people do with themselves? He says, first of all, the food and water will be drugged to keep them happy and placid, just what we want, right? Second of all, they will play video games. Oh, but why do you need them? Well, because the Bill Gates patent um, with its this is a very well-known patent, says that their piezoelectric biological processes, which go on whether you want them to or not, as long as you're alive, that's happening, will be mined for cryptocurrency for their owners. That wouldn't be you owning your body or me owning mine. So, this is the dystopian future that they quite literally have in mind for us,
All
unless
right,
we
so
stop
that's
them.
the end. That's the end goal. But what's the nearer future? Like, what do you see the timeline? Like, okay, if the war continues through the end of the year, like, how much worse will it get? If, or even if they just don't have hot, because they're talking about we might do another strike. But even if we don't do that, if it, what if we just have this stalemate where the straits just closed by both sides for the next year or something? Like, how long can this go on before it gets really intense? And when will we see it?
I
With the
think
famine.
with the
Yeah.
famine is being cooked up. We are already seeing the slaughter of animals, vast numbers of chickens. That chickens lay eggs, but chickens also provide animal flesh for eating.
Mhm.
Vast numbers of turkeys, vast, a large number of ostriches, as we know, that were not food animals. They
Mhm.
were providing antibodies that mitigated and vitiated the entire vaccine narrative. So that's why they had to go. And we're seeing the stamping out of mythical diseases diagnosed by fraudulent means known as
Mhm.
PCR tests, or not even diagnosed, just assumed, so that farming is currently being destroyed. Right now, in the last week, there are farmers all over North America reporting that boxes, tin boxes, filled with ticks of a new variety that they've never seen before are being dropped on their farms. Those ticks are the genetically engineered ticks that Bill Gates so generously paid for to give people brand new diseases, new varieties of Lyme disease, already a bioweapon engineered at Plum Island by the
Right.
United States government, thank you, and and the alpha gal distortion so that people cannot eat meat. These ticks are robust, numerous, and they are more aggressive than any ticks that anybody has ever seen before.
So let's look at this from a perfect storm. You have one, the famine developing because they're engineering it, but then if they put out this disease through these ticks where people develop allergies to meat, you're gonna have a panic about meat anyway. So that that's gonna hurt the beef market, right? And so that could get kind of hectic.
Oh, it could get kind of hectic. Remember when Thomas Malthus, the English clergyman, published his treatise,
Yep.
something like 1758, if I remember the year correctly. Thomas Malthus said, "We're never going to be able to produce more food. We've reached the apotheosis, the
Right.
pinnacle of food production. So, what we have to do is get rid of people, get rid of a lot of people. And how are we going to do that? We are going to do it through famine. We are going to do it through disease, and we are going to do it through war." Now, remember, famine breeds disease and war. Disease breeds famine and war. War breeds disease and famine. They reinforce each other. They are cyclically reinforcing. And that is the playbook that the globalists are working from. Malthusian control of us.
So you might hear some music out there from the street, but so what is the timeline? Like, what is it going to look like in January, this coming January, and what will it look like a year from now if things aren't cleared up?
If things aren't cleared up, food's going to get more and more expensive and less available. We're going to have more and more empty shelves. We're going to have runs not only on toilet paper, but on foodstuffs. And people are going to get more and more desperate. And then the government will come to the rescue. The government will say, well, we really can't distribute food out to where you live. So you come in here, we'll give you a nice little apartment. You get 200 square feet that you can live in for the rest of your life, and we'll take care of you because we're here to help. Or, no, I'm sorry, you're old, so you can just starve to death. Or you can die of this biological agent that I'm going to introduce via whatever means I choose. So that we're going to start, we're already in the middle of the world's most successful genocide. Let us not forget that. It's not like genocide's going to happen next month. We are in a genocide. According to um, Dennis Rancourt, the minimum number of people who have died just from COVID and COVID manipulation and COVID medical murder alone is a minimum of 17 to 20 million people. But according to other people who are equally reliable, if you count the fetal loss, the number of babies who have been killed by the shot and the shedding of the shot, if you count the number of people who have already died of turbo cancer and the other associated disasters, we're looking at 500 million people. That's quite a genocide. It makes Hitler look like a piker. Pol Pot's not even in the running.
Well, and
He only got 2 million.
you got to remember too, like it, slowing the growth is killing a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Slowing or making the growth of the human population is killing, a lot of people. And then I think those numbers are probably higher on the shots because the people getting sick and developing illnesses now and in the future aren't even calculated in there. So we're well, all this talk about famine is making me hungry, to be honest with you. But we are looking at a rough couple of years or more ahead because we're just talking about like food shortages and maybe energy shortages and stuff like that. But the impact on the economy, if this plays out like many people think it will, with the food and stuff like that, is going to be tremendous, like a tremendous, like a contraction like we've never
It's
seen.
it's worse than that. 200 families in Nebraska have been told that their houses, remember they own their houses. They have paid mortgages on their
Mhm.
houses. They pay electric bills. They live there. Their families live there. 200 families have been told that as of November this coming year, they will no longer have electricity for their homes. Why not? Because all the electricity will be taken by the data center. In Canada, the utilization of water, you don't live very long without water. The utilization of water has now been put into the sole, unrestrained hands of the Minister of the Environment, for instance, in Alberta. That minister gets to decide where every drop of water goes. And we know that the data centers, these monster surveillance system data centers, take vast amounts of water. And when the water comes out of the data center, it's so contaminated that it literally creates a desert out of the land, even if it's a wet desert. The
Wow.
water is
So
so
are you telling me
contaminated.
are you telling me there's a development with about 200 homes in Nebraska where they're actually going to not get electricity anymore because it's
Yep,
being diverted to these AI
yep,
database centers?
I am. And
Now,
that is
that
only the
is,
tip of the tip
I'm
of the tip
assuming
of
this is
that
being
iceberg.
litigated in the courts or what?
I certainly hope so. I
Oh,
certainly hope so.
that's incredible.
The data centers are quite a danger at many levels, not only the surveillance and the violation of the Fourth Amendment, for example, and
Mm.
our rights along other parameters as well, but the data centers are designed in such a way that they steal the resources and make it impossible for people to survive in the area of the data center. And that means that if they want to survive at all, people have to leave their home, lose their private property rights, which is part of the New World agenda, and move into urban concentration camps known as 15-minute cities, where they have neither rights nor mobility nor options for how they wish to live. These are urban concentration camps. If you have a bunch of prisoners in a concentration camp and you decide you want to get rid of them, you don't have to feed them. You don't have to give them water. You can
Well,
poison their food.
and if you're having like if you have got the ability to alter people's biology in these 15-minute cities with the nanotech and everything or frequency and so on, I think it is it's a pretty dark outlook.
And
So good.
And so we have to stop it, and we have to stop it now. And that's what we've been working really hard on. PreventGenocide2030.org has a section called the Council of Concerned Citizens, where we believe when we generate the necessary political tsunami of demand, that we can amend and pass a bill, which is now before both houses of Congress in the United States, called the Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act of 2025. That bill, properly amended, will allow us to undo all of the regulatory control that the bad forces have put into place over decades so that they could do all these bad things. That has to happen. So we're asking people to become involved in forcing the Congress. Yes, it's a corrupt Congress. It's spineless, it's gutless, it's worthless, it's highly problematic. But because it's so cowardly, the Congress of the United States does what the people demand when they demand loud enough what they want. And then it goes on and does whatever it pleases. We have to pass this act amended so that we can undo the regulatory capture that has allowed all of these atrocities to take place.
So prevent genocide 2030.org. Dr. Rima, you're the best. I said it to everybody, doesn't mean it's not true.